Welcome to Unsilent with your hosts Dave and Brian. This is not another current events podcast. We're digging deeper, diagnosing, and discussing what's really going on today, how we got here, and providing observations for future generations.
Welcome to Unsilent. We're Brian and Dave. We'd love to hear where you think we got it right and where you think we just don't know what we're talking about. You can certainly do that by visiting unsilentpodcast.com. Rumble has a great comments section, or a variety of social media channels where people love to gather and talk civilly about things. So let us know what you think. So, Brian, here we are, another week, another war. What do you think?
Well, we ended last week. I was chuckling, if I recall correctly, about how, there's so many things that are, coming unraveled and we kind of saved the Middle East thing for like the last 3.5 minutes. We squeezed it in at the very end. And
Right.
I remember kind of chuckling about that. And then that appears to be the thing that is now becoming unraveled, at least tied for first, I would say. The ICE protests and all that stuff is still a big thing. But
yeah.
Israel did their preemptive strike. What was it, Thursday last week or something like that? And
yep.
and in my lifetime, I've never seen video like that of missiles actually hitting cities and whatever.
Yeah,
which is ironic because the war in Ukraine and Russia has been going on for however many years. So, again, it seems like every week there's a catastrophe edging out the others to be the thing.
Yeah.
There's so much to unpack with that. I don't know what to make of it. But anyhow, before we get into that, I found it odd that this war has been going on for 3 years in Ukraine, and I don't remember seeing any videos like this. It's nonstop, video coverage.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought about that before, but you're right. I mean, I've seen a little here and there. I've seen, a little bit of drone footage and a bit of, missiles here and there, but but not on the scale that we're seeing there. Now, of course, Tel Aviv is a much more, sophisticated city than Kyiv is at this point. So there's, I mean, Israel is a very high-tech society. So I think that could maybe explain something.
I'm seeing videos in Iran too. And, I would expect they'd be kind of on par with Russia or Ukraine. And the interesting thing about that is last number I heard was a couple days ago, 1 million people on one side died or injured, and 750,000 on the other side of the Russia-Ukraine thing died or injured. So we're bumping up against 2 million people that, that's, and then in the Israel-Iran thing, it's, 1,500 or something like that. I don't know what the numbers are, but it's not anywhere on the scale. It's really interesting what we decide to pay attention to and what we don't.
Well, it's true. I guess we're, in some ways, we're so familiar with wars in the Middle East because, it's pretty much been at war in one fashion or another for our entire lifetimes. I'm like,
my lifetime for sure.
Yeah, for mine too. I mean, so you think about when the Islamic State of Iran became a thing back in 1979 and started with the invasion of our embassy and didn't start with that, but from our perspective, it sort of culminated with that and the hostage crisis and all that. But I have to think about that some more, because why have we not seen more footage out of Ukraine or Russia, and versus why we've seen so much so dramatically. It was interesting. The other interesting footage that I thought was kind of a telltale sign out of Tehran was everybody just decided to leave like a day ago. Before then it was like, they're Israel shooting at us, they're blowing stuff up, but then the freeways out that are leaving Tehran yesterday, they're these big, long, and I think a lot of people, the other thing that's interesting about that to me is I think a lot of people assume, in the West here at least, assume that Tehran is not a modern city, is not a,
right.
I mean, it's a sophisticated city. It's, it's not as sophisticated as Tel Aviv, but because their economy has essentially been, not doing great for quite some time, but it
40
is a
years.
modern city. And they've got a lot of oil revenue and all that kind of stuff that up to now at least has kept them going. So, yeah, this is an interesting conflict, and where it all ends. I mean, one of the things to me that's interesting about this is watching the different camps. Now, I'm not talking about the actual combatant camps, but the different camps talk about this. So there's, especially on our side of the aisle, if you will, you've got a certain number of people that are like, I'll just call them the Lindsey Graham contingent, which are more traditional Republicans, more hawkish, this type of stuff. You've got a number, and then you've got the Tucker Carlson wing of the kind of MAGA movement, who claims that Trump has betrayed MAGA and all this kind of stuff. And then you've got let's see, how should we say this? The John Fetterman camp of
the Supreme Logic camp.
It still just boggles my mind. Every time I hear Fetterman speak, it used to be when Fetterman was running for office and I'm listening to him speak, I'm like, just turn it off. But now when I hear him speak, I'm like, dude, makes sense. Dude's logical, So we got all these different odd camps that are out there, and of course, like you say, they're all competing for the outrage of the week with the immigration riots and the marches and all of that. So hard to keep it all straight.
It is. The volume of events is just, it's really, really hard to keep track of. But the camps that have developed in that, more so on the conservative side, I'd say there's a little bit of that in the Democrat side, but much more so on the conservative side. It's really fascinating to watch that unfold. So there's two surveys here. Now these are X surveys. They're not like certified by Winston Young or whatever it is. Who knows? Who knows what percentage of these things are bots and all that? I don't know. But I think the point will hold. Charlie Kirk, very conservative guy, did a poll a little less than a week ago. So probably over the weekend, as you and I are recording this, probably over the last weekend or something like that. And it says, should the U.S. get involved in Israel's war with Iran? 89.7% said no. Right. Then a poll by some guy I don't know, but Charlie Kirk forwarded the poll, and it says, should Iran be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon? 86% said no.
So it's like, okay, which do you want?
Well, right. So, and by the way, I agree with both those polls. I don't think we should get involved, and I don't think we should have a nuclear weapon. So I'm right there, that conflicted cohort that's like making no sense. I'm making no sense. This is where I like to enjoy the moments where I don't have to make decisions like this. Because I think that no matter what we do, history will show it's the wrong thing. I think we're I don't think there's a path where we're gonna thread the needle and do this. I don't believe that that's a realistic outcome, not just because it's government, but because we're people. And like, it's a really sticky, ugly situation. There's no doubt that we were lied to about the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq in 2002.
Well, okay, so I just had a conversation with somebody else. Let me challenge you on that a little bit. So there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Didn't exist. We did find a bunch of yellow cake uranium when we went there. So there was uranium. So, but the thing I think that people forget about the Iraq invasion, and we shouldn't have done it, and we should have done nation building, but every intelligence, every serious intelligence operative or agency in the world thought that Saddam had nukes. And Saddam,
hold on, they said that they thought that there was WMDs. Now I'm not convinced. Now again, maybe I'm cynical, maybe I'm paranoid, maybe I'm tinfoil hat guy. I don't know. I'm not convinced they were being honest about that.
Well, it's possible, but I don't know. I'm not sure what the benefit would have been of not. But
do you remember the Mike Benz video we broke down for 45 minutes that time? There is no domestic policy. There's only foreign policy, and the foreign policy is there just to keep the Fortune 500 companies and whatever. Like, it all seems to fit. Not maybe I'm being cynical or maybe I'm too biased, whatever, but I'm not willing to say that in earnest they just got it wrong. I'm not quite willing to take that lead.
I
Now,
have a
if you are, that's
feeling.
fine.
Well, so here's my feeling. My feeling is in all of these things, it's not this or that. It's all of these things together. So
Yeah,
I think in the Iraq situation, Saddam badly miscalculated and said, "Yeah, I'm going for nukes. Yeah, I'm going for nukes. Yeah, I'm going for nukes."
yeah,
And so he was telling everybody he was going for nukes because he thought,
yeah,
well, and by badly miscalculated, I mean he thought that would keep everybody out. Instead, we went in. So I think he badly miscalculated. I think there's a bunch of people in the sort of military industrial complex that are like, hey, this is an opportunity to sell lots of weapons
yep,
and keep things going.
and
So
get
I
some
think
oil, and yeah,
yeah. So I think there's a bunch of that. I also think there was a lot of natural skepticism about Saddam and Iraq because of Kuwait, because of what he did in
yeah,
Kuwait. So I think there was that. And I think there was, and I think the intelligence community blew it. So I think all of those things simultaneously are true. I don't think that, and that's the same thing like with that, the two poles. I think that both of those things are true. And I think our kind of lens that we look at those things through, like that poll, though both those polls in particular, are replaying the 90s and the early 2000s. It's like, should America get involved? Well, our long memory of Afghanistan and of Iraq is American involvement means boots on the ground, nation building. If there's
yeah,
anything we learned in the last 30 years, it's that, yeah, we're powerful. Yeah, we've got the most sophisticated military in the world. Yeah, we can project that power anywhere we want, but we can't make people adopt freedom and
right,
create there's no George
yeah,
Washington, Thomas Jefferson sitting in Iran or
no.
Iraq or Afghanistan ready to write a constitution.
And
That
we
was a
can
big
project power in short bursts.
in
We are
short
not good at
bursts.
the long game. We,
100%.
as Americans, we are very short sighted in how we save our money and spend our money, all the way to our foreign policy. I would agree. I think that all those things are true. Let me, and I promise you, this is not a gotcha question. I sincerely don't know this.
Yeah.
Now, again, I have a bias that you are going to be aware of course, but um, what percentage of the 51 Intel agents who said Hunter Biden's laptop was fake were being honest, do you think? Or,
I think probably, I think the majority of them were.
you honestly think that they believe that was Russian disinformation?
And I'll tell you why. Because
Okay, I can't wait to hear this.
all of these things to me, and I'm saying the majority, not all of them, I'm saying the majority. I'm saying, okay, 51, so I'm going to say 26. I think that all of us and human beings live in our own, tribal ideological bubble. And when
Yep,
information comes to us, then what do? We look at it according to our ideological bubble, and we
yep,
look at all the other people in our ideological bubble. And so Joe, intelligence agent over here, says, "Oh, that's Russian disinformation. Oh, that's Russian." And maybe they're being dishonest, but I'm like, well, yeah, must be because Joe says it. So I've gotten involved in this last week since the Iran thing, a lot of conversations with people, and they're saying, "Well, look at this X post. Look at what this person said. Look what," and I'm like, okay, well, you're looking at all these people who are saying all these things and you're believing them because they fit your presupposition. And
yeah,
so, and I had this conversation with this gal last night, just a wonderful gal. And I said, look, your source is just wrong. I mean, it's just objectively wrong. And let me show you why. And she's like, well, don't diss my sources. I'm like, look, I respect you. You're a person of goodwill and you're a
yeah,
person of righteous intention and all that. I just think your data is completely wrong and you're parroting these things. So I think, like in the Hunter Biden thing, I think there's probably a very small percentage that thought about it, that looked into it, and said, yeah, that's Russian. And I think everybody else just went around along with the crowd because it fit their ideology and because their friends were saying it. They're still honest about it because this is how they make decisions. And this is, again, how human beings make decisions. And I think this applies to those polls you're talking about. Americans don't want boots on the ground. I don't want boots on the ground. I don't want, I don't want the Marines marching into Tehran.
No.
But what I do want, and see, this is where I think all of these foreign policy things get into some level of nuance. What I do think makes sense is I understand that a couple of B-2s have left their base and they're on their way for exercises. I do think it makes perfect sense to send a couple not B-52s, B-2s, send a couple B-2s in, drop a couple of Moabs on them, blow up the mountain, leave. If you could do it without telling anybody you did it and say the Israelis did it, great, go for it. You probably can't do that because there's a lot of surveillance and stuff. But and then so if you redid those polls and said, do you want them to have a nuke? No, I don't want them to nuke. How about if we do 2 sorties over Fordo and drop a couple of Moabs and skedaddle out of town and don't do anything else? Is that American involvement? Well, yeah.
So here's why I would say I wouldn't want that. Now, again, I know we're going to do one of the two. Like I know we're going to, like, and again, I think we painted ourselves into a corner.
Oh yeah, we have for sure.
Okay, so the reason I would still say no, I don't want us to do that is because we have a pretty solid track record of saying we're going to do a thing like that, and then it turns into regime change and occupation.
Yes. That's true.
So like if I, again, you know this stuff way better than I do, for sure, no question. But if you look at how it went down in Iraq and how it went down in Libya, and how it went down in the list of, I think there's 6 different countries that we've involved ourselves, Syria and like whatever. Like we've done this thing, and every time that I can remember, or none of the times that I can remember, did we say we're going to go in there and occupy it? Not one time.
Yeah.
We said we're going to have limited involvement, no boots on the ground. Like no boots on the ground was a phrase coined in 2001 or whatever. I don't even know when it was. It was a long time ago, right? So this is the playbook. Like this is the play. Now, whether they're lying about the weapons of mass destruction 2003 and the Hunter Biden laptop, or they're just grossly incompetent, okay, I'll consider that you're correct, and that they thought they were being honest, but they just didn't do any due diligence or whatever.
Sure.
Like, okay, sure. I can go along with that. But whether it's incompetence or just flat out lying, I don't really care.
Yeah, because we got a record. We got a track record. Yeah, no, I hear you.
The result, you can't run a business this way, and you can't run your life like this way. Like, well, my intent was this, so like it's all okay. No, you're bankrupt. Like that's how it works.
Yeah, no, and I totally acknowledge that. I mean, I think there are some examples. You could say that the first Gulf War, get them out of Kuwait, and then leave. You could say that was because we didn't try to occupy anybody then.
Yeah, and by the way, other than people who, I remember I was in high school when that happened, and the support for that was, I'm ballparking it 90-10.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There was the 10% who had a lot of hard feelings from Vietnam and things like that. They're like, here we go again. Right. But 90% was like, no, get that guy out of there. This isn't right. It's one of our allies. Like whatever. Okay. I think that was like the end of the line, though, for us. And there's many things we were involved in that none of us knew about. Our involvement in it, where we learned about years later that none of us would have supported. Right, so we can't look through that lens back then. But I think there was a turning point in going in after 9/11, like going into Afghanistan, big support for that.
Yep.
But there was a pretty big resistance to Iraq. There was a legitimate resistance to that. That was. You could feel it in the moment, and it wasn't because of hindsight,
right?
Because it was a step too far. And then we've done it again and again and again. Like we got rid of Gaddafi, and we got rid of all these people. And what's the outcome? The outcome is that they're always incorrect in their assessment. They're always unprepared in their what it's going to take to do a thing.
Right.
They rarely seem to have an end game that they will tell us. I'm sure they have an end game, but they're not one that they'll tell us. Like there's no defined when we hit this point, we're out. Like there's not any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And they just they're either grossly incompetent or lying, and we end up with these boondoggles. Like,
and I think it's a combination. I do think it's a combination of those things. I also think it's a combination of complexity theory. So, and let's tie this. I had this conversation the other day. Let's tie this back to fourth turning eras. So, America biting off more than it can chew. So I had this conversation with somebody recently where I said, look, what we did in Iraq was we bit off a whole lot more than we could chew. Same thing in Afghanistan. Now, we started this right after World War II with the Great Society programs under Lyndon Johnson. We said, we have conquered Hitler. We have made the world free. We're the most powerful economy, military. On every level, we are the most powerful in the world. Our next target is poverty. We're going to crush poverty. We are Americans. We can do this. So the American ethos and the post high kind of mentality has infected and affected us all since World War II. And I believe to a great extent, that's what caused us to believe that we could turn Iraq into a blooming democratic paradise. Same thing with Afghanistan. Same thing with our own war on poverty. We just bite off more than we can chew. And that's again, a result of these turnings that we talk about, these societal demographic, mentalities that we've got. And so that's where we're at today.
I think I think there's a bit of a change that's happening in what you're describing there too. I agree with all the things you just said. And one of the things I think we do is grossly overestimate how much other people in other cultures want the kind of society we have.
100%. Right? Totally agree.
Now, all of us like blindly thought, well, of course we go to Iraq. Like, okay, I'm not excited about, but of course they're going to want freedom. Like, who wouldn't want freedom? Because that's the lens we look through, right?
Yep.
I think that is changing. I think as a society, we are going, you know what? People just don't want this. And right. I'm not saying all of us. I think there's a faction who's like, of course they want this. And a faction, they deserve it, which I would agree with that. Like, everybody deserves that, but if they don't want it, they don't want it, right?
Right.
And there's a faction that's like, why are we doing this? These people don't want this stuff anyway. Like, they can do their own thing if they can have their own revolution if they don't like it. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's the approach I would wish for these people. But I think that our naive belief that everyone would want the society we have with the democratic system we have, I think that has changed where the people just we're not unified in that naive belief anymore.
Yeah, and that's 100%. I believe that's 100% right, because I think we more and more people realize that now because of the last 30, 40 years of history, and we're not kind of blinded to our and we had enormous success after World War II, enormous success, the best success of any country in history. But we became blinded by our own success, and that led to the seeds of our current dilemmas / crises, because we thought that utopia was possible, and we're the ones that are going to bring it to pass. And so I think that's probably what's happened there. Now go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the other thing is, you were talking about World War II. The other thing I was thinking as you were saying that was, FDR wanted Pearl Harbor, right? Like they knew it was coming, and the United States citizenship was 100% against, or not very high percentage against
the war.
Our involvement in World War II or whatever. They knew Pearl Harbor was coming. They knew Japan was kind of boxed in, didn't have a choice. They were out of oil and all these things, right?
Yep.
So the version of history that I've heard is like they just kind of let it happen. Like, they moved the carriers out. Like they and I'm not saying that they murdered our soldiers. I'm not suggesting that. I'm wondering, and I don't know this, I'm asking you, is there a parallel in the Civil War? Is there a parallel like to the Fort Sumter being like, well, if we got to have a thing like this will get us going, was there that? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, again, I would go back to the lens of human nature again and say that if you don't have data, then you interpret the world by the laws of the universe. And one of the sets of the laws of the universe is how human beings behave. And so applying that overlay without any evidence to the pre-Civil War antebellum era is, there's probably people that suspected that. There's probably people that maybe knew that Sumter was coming and that it was going to be attacked, and they're like, well, let it happen because this is the only way we're going to get out of this. And and here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Here's the thing. In those situations, we look at that and we think, oh man, that is really slimy. That's real. Maybe that's how it has to play out.
Well, that's what I was getting at. That's what I'm getting at is, okay, so if I know that there's a parallel, I know that happened in World War II, based on the information I have. I have a strong degree of certainty that. I don't know about the Civil War.
Right.
I don't know about the Revolutionary War. But I also got to think, like, people know, not everyone, but enough people in powerful positions or, influential positions or whatever, like, well, it's coming. Let's just, do what we got to do to navigate this as best we can. I tend to believe that is probably how it unfolds.
Yeah.
And therefore, I suspect it'll be the same way this time.
Yep.
And so if not this, then what would be the next easiest thing?
Yeah.
You wait for China to invade Taiwan. That's not going to be a piece of cake.
No.
You're gonna wait for Russia to, whatever. That's not going to be a piece of cake. Like,
right.
Of the predicates you would like look for if you were inclined to look for this kind of stuff, like, this is kind of a layup.
Well, that's what I think. That's exactly what I think. I think if you I mean, you and I and the people that read Strauss and Howe's book and the current version of the 430s here, people that have read that are not the only people that know how these cycles work.
It's like, that book first hit Congress, I think, in 98 or 99. The Speaker of the House or something like that bought a copy for everyone in Congress whatever year it was.
Yeah, and so we are not privy to knowledge that nobody else has. And so if you're in a position, but we're not in position of power other than our great influence through our podcast.
Right.
The people that are in positions of power, if I was in that spot, I would probably look at it and say, okay, we got crappy road 1, crappy road 2, crappy road 3, but we're going to go down a crappy road. Let's see if we can steer ourselves towards the least apocalyptic way that we can get through this that's possible.
I'm a little more cynical than you. I'm saying this is a layup in that the economy can fall and it's not anybody's fault here.
Sure.
The change that in the posture and how we look at illegal immigration would change, and nobody's really at fault for that. Like these other big dominoes are at play. Sure. It changes the framing of those things where if I'm the guy who everybody hates and I'm the boogeyman, the economy can go down. I can save the bond market without having to be the guy who crashed the stock market. It's not my fault.
Right.
This thing happened. We had to get involved. Like, I'm looking at it more through that lens than I am like, okay, let's just get on with the fourth turning, and which I agree with, by the way. But I'm looking at it more like, because I think these people care about their ego and their pride and their reputation and their legacy and all that. So I think that's what drives them as much as anything. Not really, let's just get on with it and get this over with so we can endure our 5 years and like get back to great times. I don't think they look at it that way as much as how's it not going to be my fault?
Well, and I think the key to your statement is as much as. So in other words, I think both again, I'm going to come back to a lot of these things in my mind are both and not either or kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I think they look at it and they think, okay, well, we're going down this path. It's going to suck. I'm in power. I don't want to get blamed, but I do want to take the path that's not going to kill my kids and grandkids. So I think both those things happen simultaneously. I'll give you an example 100%. of that. So I've done some reading recently I can't even remember the author's name, but there's a number of folks that have done some really deep dive kinds of work, journalists that have done some really deep dive kinds of work into the pre 9/11 kind of world and what was happening before 9/11. And there's receipts for all this stuff where people have traced different meetings and different, things that have happened overseas. So there was a real sense that something like this was coming, but the CIA and they've made plenty of mistakes or plenty of selfish things. The CIA thought that something was going to happen, but they didn't think it was going to happen quite as fast and as successfully as it did. So when they saw months beforehand that it was going to happen, months before September 11th, that it was going to happen, they automatically go into CYA mode to say, okay, we can't stop it. so let's not get blamed for it. And there you go. So you've got a combination of one, we didn't understand. This is back to complexity theory in my mind. I think a lot of these things, come back to we overreach as human beings thinking we understand all the moving parts and thinking we can control all the moving parts, and we just can't. And human nature coming into that scenario is like, oh crap, I miscalculated. Now my number one priority is not to get blamed for it. So, so it's not all nefarious. Some of it's nefarious, some of it's, overreach.
Hubris.
Hubris is the right word to use. And I think these things play out that way a lot more than we would like them to play out. Now, the mistakes in those situations for us as interpreters is to look at it and say, it's all one thing or it's all another. It's completely righteous and nobody could have known. Okay, well, that's wrong. Or it's all, this massive trilateral, Illuminati conspiracy and they're pulling all the strings. No, that's not true either. I think there's this combination of things that happen. And that's how we get into these bad situations.
Yeah, and as far as like these polls, the thing that one of the things that stands out to me with that is, for the last 10 years, so you and I are recording this in 2025. So essentially, for sure for 10 years, since he came down the golden escalator, as they say, that for sure since then, maybe even a few years before that, we've been in a very binary decision-making society. I'm either for it or against it, right?
Yep.
And the kinds of problems we're having now, there's no binary answers for it.
No.
Do you want Iran to have a nuclear weapon? No. Do you want to invade? No. Okay, well, both those things can't be true at once, right?
What are you going to do? Right, yeah.
Right. So it seems to me that this is how the fourth turning unfolds is we get in this binary mode and it works for a decade or however many years, but then the problems we start facing are so complex that there's no binary answers. And so it takes that big unifying thing to give us that unity and that binary thing again, or whatever, however you want to look at that. But it seems that we're encroaching upon the world of binary solutions aren't options really anymore. Do you want to crash the stock market? No. Do you want to save the bond market? Yes. Okay. Well,
good luck.
Good luck with that, right? Do you want to have open borders? No. Do you want to split families up and remove tens of millions of people or 10 million people,
right?
Who some of which are good people who just came here to do, make a better life for their family. It's something you and I would do.
Yep.
Well, no, we don't like you. Okay. Well, you can't have it both ways, right? It seems like we're finding ourselves in more and more of these situations where we can't have it both ways. And it just feels to me like, it's just going to be chaos.
Well, see, and this is, I think what happens in these situations is you go down the binary path until you are forced into nothing 100%. Else. And that actually, like for FDR, that was after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, he was scot-free because he had no choice. And you can't be blamed if you don't have a choice. Yep. So if somebody breaks in and, you don't know if they're going to kill you or not, and you kill them in self-defense, well, maybe you're going to jail. On the other hand, if they're at your throat and they got a knife and there's video of it and you pull out a gun unbeknownst to them and shoot them, you're scot-free. You have no choice. So I think the leaders, they will want to hide the choices they've got until there's no choice, and then they're scot-free. Then they're good to go. And so that's why
Which would explain why you want that Pearl Harbor moment, why you might wanted that Folsom Center moment, why you might want an Iran moment. Like it again. I'm not saying I like it. Just saying we're human and we make decisions based on ego and legacy and what other people think and like all fear, all these things, and we're not prone to making awesome decisions. And the CYA factor for a government is like off the charts.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
100%.
off the charts.
Totally. I mean, you saw that as soon as the bombing started to happen, and Marco Rubio, who I respect tremendously, we're not involved. We're not involved. Yeah. That's all them. They're doing it all. We don't talk to me about it. And then
72 hours later, though, We have clear airspace. We have air superiority.
Right. And I think this has got to be so. I think, thinking about Trump's personality, I think it's got to be so tough for him to hold his tongue because he is not predisposed to not say stuff. And so he says things like that. And I think, we can really see what's going on there. I mean, there's no
seen a lot of people who are diehard Trump supporters turn on him in the last few days of like, hey, you campaigned on this.
Tucker.
And this is an instance where I actually think that he is negotiating with every statement he makes publicly. They need to take the deal. They should have taken the deal. We gave him 60 days. On day 61, look what happened. Get back to the table. Make a deal.
Yep.
And are you going to drop the bomb? I don't know. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. I think that in this case, I truly think that is negotiating.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
I could be overestimating his ability. I'm not saying he's playing 4D chess. I am saying if the people think you're not going to do a thing or are going to do a thing, that changes the calculus for them and how they make a decision versus having a complete unknown.
Right.
It does force people to want certainty and come to the negotiating table because they want to have clarity and certainty and know what's going to happen, things like that. So in this case where people are kind of turning on him for doing that, I actually think that he's doing a reasonably good job of handling the situation, trying to negotiate via the media and statements and things like that.
Yeah, and I think this is, is he playing 4D chess or what? Here's what he's doing. He's doing what he always does. He is the art of the deal. The deal is everything to him. I listened to him. This is a little bit of a side note. I was listening to him complain about Jerome Powell and that he's not going to lower rates. And he said, and Trump says in a moment of brutal honesty, he says, "I've insulted the guy brutally. I've been nice to him, and nothing seems to work."
Nothing seems to work. Yeah.
So this is, you think about this from a Trumpian perspective. To him, it seems to me, this is my analysis. It seems to me that everything is the deal. And so he's like, I told Iran they should do this. It's 61 days, and now the bombs are dropping. They should have negotiated with me. And then he puts out something, unconditional surrender in all caps. I mean, it's all the deal.
But let's say you're selling a house, Dave. You're selling a house for $500,000, and it took you a little while, but you found a buyer. And they do the home inspection, and you're eagerly waiting. What are they going to ask for? Are they going to ask for nothing? Like you're eagerly waiting, but there's things wrong with the house. Right. There's legit things wrong with the house. It's going to cost let's say $40,000 or $25,000, something like that. And you're like, okay, what are they going to do? Are they going to make me fix it? Are they going to ask for concessions? Are they going to, and the potential buyer comes back and says, you know what, we're going to think about it for a few days. Now, would you be more inclined or less inclined as a seller to say, you know what, I need to get this thing sold. I'll just fix the stuff. Now that is negotiating. Now, totally. I think that's kind of what's happening here.
I do. And I think, the thing about Trump, I also believe in terms of his negotiating style and his deal style is he doesn't shy away from brinksmanship at all. I mean, it's like with these tariffs, he's like, tariffs are the most wonderful, word in the English language. Well, he doesn't believe that. I mean, the most wonderful
word.
Think
he's going to get 150% or 165% in China? No, I think his end goal was probably 25%. Yeah. But you got to start big because you knew it was going to be a big battle.
Exactly. And that is the way that he handles everything. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I had a friend of mine who had a construction business, civil engineering construction business, and they put in a bid on a Trump property to do the work. And so Trump calls him up, and he calls my friend up, and he says, "Yeah, I got your bid. We're looking for it. We'd like to do business with you, but I need you to shave off some something off this." And my friend says, "Well, Mr. Trump, we know you're a hard driver, so we gave you our absolute best." Well, thanks so much for that. And the deal went to somebody else who then went out of business because, they couldn't, they took the deal and they shouldn't have taken the deal. But it's all to him. I think he's not scared of brinksmanship. And so I think in his position, you can be a good brinksmanship player if you have the strongest hand. He's fond of talking about.
Well, that's like the thing in poker is, if you're playing Texas Hold'em, like you can go all in every time except for one.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly.
Going all in works every single time except for one.
Exactly. And so I think that's what we saw and are seeing with Trump. I mean, I suspect. Trump has also said I listened to, was it Don Jr., I think, or maybe it was Eric, say something to the effect of, well, when he came down the escalator 10 years ago, which is like 10 years ago today or yesterday or something.
Like the last week or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, just recently. He said in that some of his initial remarks that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. So he's been insanely, clear on his position on that.
He's in the 88% of both these polls. He's been saying from day one we shouldn't be in regime change and meddling in foreign wars. And he's been saying Iran should not have a nuclear. He is the 88% in both these polls.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, and so I guess the question is, what I don't understand about Tucker and Rand Paul and some others is I wonder, maybe you know this because I haven't heard this. I wonder if they are thinking that it's going to be a mission creep kind of scenario if we send in a couple of B-2s to blow up the mountain. Or I wonder if they're opposed to that.
I can't speak for them, obviously, but here's my sense from both those. And I listen to Tucker a fair bit, not every single thing he puts out, but I listen a fair bit. And I get the same sense from Rand Paul. They've both been in DC so long and seen so much corruption and so much just flat thievery of tax money.
Sure.
And so much deception and just, deal making that really crushes people's lives or kills them for personal gain. I think they are so jaded by that they don't believe that it could be any other possible outcome. And again, I tend to agree with that, by the way. I said when I started. I tend to think that they probably did know there was a bunch of BS in 2003 in Iraq. I tend to believe that they did know it was Hunter's Biden laptop was BS. It's hard for me to. It's kind of like going back to what we always say. Like they wouldn't do that. It's kind of like for me. It's like they couldn't be that dumb. Like they but maybe they are. And I'm just overestimating their intelligence. I don't know. But I think for both of those guys and like the Alex Joneses and things like that, who are really in the weeds on all the nefarious, horrible things that the shadow government, the blob, the CIA, like all these things they've done. I think the people who are really in the know on that, I think they're just so jaded and cynical. They just can't. It's hard for them to imagine that like we're on the up and up with this.
Yeah, well, and for good reason. I mean, there's plenty of history to indicate that. My hope this time is the X factor in all of that compared to everything we've had to deal with before for the last 30, 40 years is Trump. In other words, Trump was not afraid to send a cruise missile. I think it was a cruise missile that killed Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general.
Yep.
So he killed him and was gone. No, that was the end of that. Or during Trump's first term, when he attacked Syria and killed a bunch of Russian troops. So it's like, we've got troops in Syria. We've got people in Syria. Well, we got people everywhere. I'm sure we got people all over the world. But we didn't have a greater expansion of the war in Syria in terms of sheer ground forces or anything like that. Trump just went in, he did his business, he smacked Putin down, and then we were out with all our CIA spooks running around doing whatever they do. So it's conceivable to me that while those concerns and those the history that's there tell people that this is how it goes. We get in and we get mission creep and there's money to be made. So, the military industrial complex goes into full. It's conceivable to me that Trump being the X factor in all of that may not allow that to happen, may indeed go do the thing.
And that's the thing. Like I in fact heard when Tucker Carlson did an interview with Steve Bannon, who's like huge Trump supporter, but it's now like, what the hell is going on here? Like you can't be considering this. Like he's in that camp, right? The sense I got, again, I'm paraphrasing heavily here, but the sense I got from that conversation was he was our last hope. He was the last guy since Kennedy to not be run by the CIA and the blob and all this stuff. And if they can turn him, it's over.
Yeah.
And so no, I'm not saying whether that's legit or not. I hold out hope as well. I think that he is such an X factor and he's so much more prepared this time than he was in his first term.
Right.
He could be playing games with them that that they're not. I can see. I'm not suggesting he's playing 4D chess. I'm not suggesting he's a brilliant guy. He does strike me as the kind of guy who would be like, okay, I got them though, right? You know what I'm saying?
And I think, to me, that seems very likely. And the reason it seems likely, again, is back to Trump's personality. Trump does not have, from what I can tell, and, I'm not in any inner circle, so what do I know? But Trump doesn't seem to me to have some kind of grand foreign policy strategy or document or doctrine. What's the Trump doctrine? The Trump doctrine is America first. You piss me off, I'm going to do something bad to you. And I'm going to yell at you.
Bill Clinton doctrine, essentially.
Yeah, I mean it's just it's his inbred who he is. I don't mean inbred in the
Yeah, I got
hillbilly
you.
term, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It seems to me that, that if that is indeed Trump's kind of way of doing things, very transactional, then how do you benefit? How do you do a transaction now that improves your balance sheet if you're Trump? Well,
Right.
what you do to improve your balance sheet now is you prove you're a serious player on the foreign stage. You bomb Fordo and collapse the mountain, and you get out and you go do a rally. I mean,
Yeah.
see, to me, that seems a very Trumpian, logical, transactional way of doing things. And then I would think in his mind, it's like, yeah, Bannon and Tucker and all these other kooky Tucker, as he calls him now,
Yeah.
they'll back off because a week from now, they'll see that we're not doing, or a month from now, they'll see that we're not doing this, and they'll be back on my train. So, I can go ahead
And by
and
the
do
way,
this.
I think they would if he pulled that off. I
Yeah.
think that their concern is,
Yeah.
okay, he's gonna be he's a lamb being led to slaughter.
Right.
He's being fed all this information. You have no choice, Mr. President. You have to do this stuff. They're gonna goad him into doing it, and then they got him. Right.
Yeah.
That's the playbook that we've seen over and over and over again.
Right.
Right. If he can do all those things, but somehow get out of the slaughter,
Yeah.
and then say, no, we're out, and somehow be playing some kind of game behind the scenes that none of us can see, where he has an out and he pulled that off, I think he would gain even more support because he would be the first guy in 4 decades to pull that off, right?
So, well, see, I think he has. I think that's probably what he's going to do. I don't want to make predictions, but if you think about it, everybody else who's ever come before him depended on the structures and the sanctity of the structures of government and of geopolitics in the world. So Trump doesn't care about structures. He goes to NATO and says, do your own thing. I mean, I don't think Trump ever had any intention of withdrawing from NATO.
Mocked Germany from buying all their oil from Russia or their fuel from Russia.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he sent out J.D. Vance and, just insult all of the Europeans. Just get them all in a room and tell them they're all a bunch of losers. So there is nobody in our history who, or, Obama or Bush, who would have done that. So I think, and I think the kind of the deep states way of doing things is it depends on supporting certain structures because it lives by structure. The deep state lives by structure. It lives by its own, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you have to do this. But Trump's like, yeah, I don't have to do anything. What do you mean?
Right.
150% tariffs on China. It's going to crash. Yeah, whatever. I don't have to do anything. Yeah. And then he changes his mind next week.
He'll bounce back.
Yeah, and he changes his mind 3 days later. So see, to me, that because of that transactional nature of Trump, I don't think that they can have as much of a hold on him as they normally would anybody else who is bound to existing structures and systems and all of that.
It reminds me of the movie Braveheart. You know, at the end of Braveheart, where Mel Gibson looks over and the king or the knight or whatever that he thought was on his team lifts up his hood and he's riding with the king in the opposition.
Right.
It feels like that's what they're afraid. You were asking, what's Rand Paul and Tucker Carlson in C-band,
right.
It feels to me like that's what they're afraid of. Like the guy we put all this stuff behind is going to get got. Yeah. Captured by the blob.
Right.
Whether he believes what he's doing is the right thing or he's being fed bad information to be led to do the wrong thing, doesn't matter.
Right.
That but if he's lost, it's all lost.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's based on some of the things I'm seeing, people who are ardent supporters of his who are like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
It feels to me like that's what's driving it.
Yeah.
Real quick before you run out of time, one thing I will say is I'm not like a meme guy. I don't even like the word meme. But some of the memes that are unfolding from this, like I'm looking at one now that Alex Jones posted. I know you're a huge Alex Jones fan, but
maybe not.
It's a picture of Lindsey Graham and Mark Levin in a hot tub, hanging out.
Oh, jeez. Oh, my word.
And then Tucker Carlson interviewed Ted Cruz, I think yesterday. I've not heard the whole interview, but he asked him something like, what's the population of Iran? And Ted Cruz had no idea. And he said, okay, what's the ethnic mixture of Iran? And he had no idea. And he's like, right. How the hell could you want to bomb a country? You don't know anything about this country. How could you want to bomb it?
Right.
So Ted Cruz posts a thing of Tucker Carlson interviewing Luke Skywalker and asking him what's the population of the Death Star.
I saw that. I saw that. That was hilarious.
My point is, like, in all this chaos, a couple things. One, we're a creative species for sure. Yeah. And it seems like humor is our only outlet. It 100%. Really seems like that's all we got.
Yeah, I've seen several of the memes and different cartoons of Trump and the Ayatollah that a number of them have made me laugh hilariously. So, yeah.
At least also, I want to circle back to something you said a little while ago about Saddam Hussein blustering about his ability to do things.
Yeah.
Yesterday, 24 hours ago or so, as you and I are recording this, the supreme leader of Iran said, tonight we're going to unleash something that will be remembered for centuries.
Yeah.
Right? And nothing, right?
No.
It seems to me that if I was to counsel that culture on how to handle these things, perhaps like bloviating and boasting about things that aren't really going to happen might not be your best strategy.
Yeah. Well, and see, this is the other problem we have in these situations like this, or dealing with North Korea or even China, and that is, their worldview in the way of interpreting things is so completely different and foreign to us that, when I saw him say that, it's like there's one of two possibilities when the Ayatollah said
only one of two. Only one of two for sure.
Either they got a suitcase nuke someplace that they smuggled out, and some city someplace is going to go up in flames, or
China smuggled them something like
China
that.
got them something. Although Chinese are way too cautious to allow that to happen, I'm pretty sure. Or he's just bloviating because that's the way they do. That's what they believe.
Everything is a big dick measuring contest.
What's that?
Everything's a big dick measuring contest. Like
100%. Yes, exactly.
I got the mother of all wars coming your way. And remember that was like nothing.
Yeah.
1992 or whatever year that was.
You remember with Kim Jong-un last time, and he was the same thing. We're going to, level all the American cities. And it's like, well, no, you can't do that.
No, you're really not.
You're not. Go get a haircut. Go eat some sushi or something.
Okay, and on the lighter note, I got to read this to you, Dave. This is a screenshot. Again, it seems like a reputable source. I never know on this stuff, but this is it's just such an illustration of our times. And now you and I talk about how post World War II, duty, honor, doing the right thing, all that stuff was paramount, and now we're at the opposite end of the spectrum on that. So a woman writes the photographer of her wedding from 4 years previous, and here's what she says: "You did a wonderful job on our photos, but they went to waste as we are now divorced. I need a refund of the amount we paid you because we don't need them anymore."
There you go. It's the Nordstrom approach. We talked about it in the 90s. It's the Nordstrom approach. Return the... Oh, my.
And I thought that was such a great thing. And then one of the things that really made me laugh this week, as you probably know, Randy Weingarten stepped down from the DNC, right?
Yeah, heard that.
And you saw her latest, again, for the people who call the other side Nazis, their speeches look like, they're like an AI version of her doing a Hitler speech with the same machinations with the arms and the jumping and things like that. It's eerie how much her body language and style matches like the people that she says everybody else is Nazis,
right?
And I heard somebody, like, she's just ranting and raving about, Trump is the end of the world and all this kind of stuff. And I heard somebody say, have you ever seen give her such a passionate speech about the fall in grades in the last 30 years? Like, have you ever seen her say anything even close to that level of passion about the thing she's in charge of?
Yeah.
And it's like, these are such indications of the moment we live in, where that honor, duty, doing the right thing, like, focusing on good outcomes, not your intent, like all those things we've lost the plot.
Exactly right. No, and that's exactly where the fourth turning is at. And that's why we're not, we're not going to reason our way out of this. We're going to be forced into you've got no choice but to do X, whatever X is, who knows what X is. And that's the way it's going to play out.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, I didn't do a good job of explaining this in the beginning, but what Dave and I are trying to do is explain to future generations what this moment in time was like as they look back and no doubt wonder, what the hell are those guys thinking? So that's our purpose here. I didn't do a good job of explaining that up front. So Hopefully it makes sense, though, that we're trying to explain to future generations all the chaos and craziness that's going on from our perspective. And that's it for this week. And until next week, it's Dave and Brian signing off.
See you next week.
Do you want to be Unsilent? Make your voice heard on our social media channels and share where you think we got it right or wrong. Go to unsilentpodcast.com for social links so you can join the discussion.